How are you guys all doing today? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Today is October 21st, almost through the entirety of Week 7 here, but we're going to go over what we saw yesterday. A great slate of games, a handful of great games that we saw. We're going to talk about the Sunday Night Football matchup, obviously, with Russell Wilson impressing, the Jets not so much. Then also we're going to talk about the Lions and the Vikings game, a great game from two teams that I believe are the best in the NFC. We're going to talk about Saquon's revenge game, and we're going to preview the two Monday Night Football games on tonight. That is what's on today's menu, so make sure to stick around for all of that. And before we get started, I'd like to remind you guys, if you want to be part of the conversation, want to make any questions, comments, or share your opinions, don't hesitate to do so. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy and insights. So if you want to make it absolutely sure that your message stands out and you want to be featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that just by using the new Super Chat feature. Just click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box to send in your Super Chat, and this way it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. So we rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we always appreciate it when you guys are able to do that. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and exciting as possible. Make sure to use that Super Chat feature. Get involved in the conversation because there's a lot of good games going on, and there's a lot to comment on them. So make sure to do that to be involved with the show. But now we can review a little bit, preview the games that we have coming up, starting with the early game tonight, looking at the game between the Buccaneers and the Baltimore Ravens. One of the two Monday Night Football games on tonight, this one being the first one at 8:15 Eastern Time. Kickoff is set around there. The Ravens will travel down to Tampa Bay to face the Buccaneers. Both enter this game at 4-2. Baltimore, on one hand, is on a 4-game win streak, while on the other hand, Tampa Bay has been alternating between wins and losses over the last 5 weeks. So a tale of two paths to get here to 4-2. But both, something to feature in this game features two first-round quarterbacks from the 2018 draft. Baker Mayfield obviously being drafted number 1 overall to Cleveland that year, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have Lamar Jackson taken with the very last pick of that year's draft, and now they meet again here in tonight's contest, so that's a little bit interesting to keep an eye on. Also, speaking about Lamar and his just trajectory, entering this game, he has a 22-1 record against NFC teams up until this point. He's 2-0 against the Buccaneers as well, and that record, the 22-1 record, is the best record by a quarterback against an opposing conference in NFL history. Quite literally never losing to NFC teams in his career is Lamar Jackson. We'll see if the Bucs can beat Lamar for the first time since he's been in the NFL, with Baker there now as their quarterback. And speaking of Baltimore, we're going to look at them first and just give an overview of what kind of monster we're dealing with, right? Because they have been really just bullying and running over teams up until this point through the first 6 weeks of the NFL. They lead the NFL with 1,232 rushing yards. They have run for at least 150 yards and scored a rushing touchdown in every game so far. That's 150 yards combined, at least between Lamar, Derek, and Justice Hill, probably the three most common runners. While individually, Derrick Henry leads all running backs with 704 rushing yards, and they're trying to stay ahead, of Pittsburgh, who currently is right now leading the AFC North because they have played already. They're at 5-2, so the Ravens wanting to keep pace with that in tonight's game, trying to also go to 5-2 and reclaim that top spot. And in terms of injuries, I haven't seen any updates on inactives or active players tonight. I still know that for the Ravens, they have names like Broderick Washington, a defensive tackle that's not playing tonight, Malik Harrison, a linebacker that's out tonight, and Arthur Marlette, who is still, coming back from the IR. He is inactive for tonight's game. So, not too major injuries for the Ravens thus far. And also, with most of their starters playing, and obviously Derrick Henry getting most of the attention. Somebody else to keep an eye on is Zay Flowers. He's coming off of a career performance last week against Washington. I think coming into this game, I would have tallied Zay Flowers as the number one wide receiver for them, and I think he's taken a more mature step this year, if that makes sense, right? I feel like he's more assured, and there's a better connection with him and Lamar, and it was really at his peak last week where they played the Commanders, and it was a pretty close game all in all, given the circumstance and how the game ultimately played out. It was pretty close, so they needed all of that production from Zay Flowers, and we'll see how he follows it up tonight against the not too stout Tampa Bay defense in tonight's game. So we'll see how he tries to build off of that performance for the Baltimore Ravens. But now shifting over to the Buccaneers, where I mentioned just that their defense might not be the most relied upon, the one that's most stout in the NFL, but talking about offense, the Bucs are among the best in the NFL. They just put up 51 points on the New Orleans Saints last week in Spencer Rattler's first start in New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken, and they're one of the NFL's highest scoring teams. They're averaging about 29.7 points per game at this juncture, and although that is who they are right now offensively, we have seen them struggle a little bit against Denver's defense, a little bit in their home loss to the Broncos, which was pretty surprising. So there's a bit of a caveat there, I guess, with the Bucs, for as potent and just very versatile that their offense is, with Godwin, Evans, Trey Palmer, if he's able to play tonight, and the running backs as well. If they're all able to go, they pose a threat as well. But Baltimore's defense maybe hasn't been as shut down as it was last year, but still, they're able to put pressure on the quarterbacks and still make plays, regardless of maybe giving up more points this year, but they do make the timely stops more often than not. Looking at the game against the Bills, where they completely shut out the Bills, and also more recently against the Commanders, just making the timely stops to create that separation, right? Bending but not breaking, having the Commanders kick 3 points. Maybe they drive on them, but they only hold them to 3 points, and their offense scores touchdowns, right? And that's how you create that bit of separation, and that's pretty much all you need in today's NFL. You don't need to hold teams to like 15 or at most 17 points. It's very hard to do now in the NFL. So the fact that the Ravens, have a good complementary relationship between both sides is one of the reasons why they're so tough. And the Buccaneers are going to have to maybe be overpowered on offense or get a little bit more out of their defense in tonight's matchup, which could be without a couple key guys. The inactives haven't been updated as of yet from what I can tell so far while I'm looking at it here in live time. But for right now, what the injury report says, Trey Palmer is questionable with a concussion. He may or may not play tonight, trying to recover off of that. He's questionable. Also, Rashad White is questionable with a foot injury, and their biggest one of all, Vita Vea, is also questionable. He's expected to play, though, according to this report 4 hours ago. He's expected to play tonight against the Ravens, so that's the biggest one, in my opinion, for obvious reasons, right? Trying to stop the running game. He's expected to play while he's trying to recover, or has recovered, from a hamstring injury that has ailed him a little bit over the last couple weeks. But he's expected to play. That's great news for the Buccaneers. And now, with both of those, now we have everything laid out on the table, looking at some key matchups to keep track of while we're watching the game tonight to determine a winner, because I believe these things will determine it. Obviously, will be the Buccaneers defensive line against Hunter Henry and that running game, including Lamar Jackson. It's always interesting to see how teams game plan, whether they're going to have a spy on Lamar, whether they're just going to pack up the box and leave the receivers wide open a little bit, or more favorable matchups. That's what Washington did, and it almost ended up working for them. But, like we talked about, Baltimore's defense came up with some timely stops. So how they managed that relationship on defense and offense, and how often they switch it up, obviously, too. I'll also be interested to see how much they blitz as well and get in Lamar's face to to see how he responds to that. But really, the defensive line with Vita Vea, now that we know, is going to be huge. And it's night and day what the Buccaneers are able to do on run defense with Vita Vea there. So it's great that he's going to be in there for them. And elsewhere, the Buccaneers wide receivers, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, against this Baltimore Ravens secondary, which again hasn't looked so, locked down. They have a rookie playing in Nate Wiggins, and you still have the Marlon Humphreys of the world and the Kyle Hamiltons and stuff like that. But if you look at some of their losses and against closer oppositions, the Commanders were able to do something with, great receiving talent like Terry McLaurin. The Raiders beat them with big games from Brock Bowers and Devontae Adams while he was still there. And even the Cowboys, for what it's worth, they were able to drive the ball down a little bit on them. So this Bucs team is just as explosive as any offense. So I'll be interested to see how successful they will be in tonight's matchup. Evans and specifically Godwin as well, because I feel like he's been gaining a lot of momentum recently. He's been playing very good. So those are the two matchups. But in the end, I don't like picking the obvious choice with Baltimore. But then again, like, the Bucs are so unpredictable, and I could easily see this game being just back and forth offensively, and the Ravens could just blitz the heck out of Baker and really try to make him under pressure and just overwhelm him early on. And then from that point, if that is the case, that it's pretty tough for any team to come back on the Ravens when they possess the ball so well. So for that reason, I think I'm just going to go with Baltimore. I feel like I'm making more excuses to go with Baltimore for right now. So I feel like they're just more assured of who they are. I'm a little bit doubtful of who else can kind of step up for this Buccaneers offense. And with what I've seen from the Ravens and their defense, I trust them a little bit more. Lamar's playing on an unbelievable level with Derrick Henry, and I feel like they just can edge them out a little bit more. I can rely upon them more to make bigger plays, albeit on the road. So we're going to go with the Ravens in tonight's first game. It's going to be probably the best one, because the other one, not to say that it's bad, but these are two more notable teams. So I'm going with the Ravens tonight. We'll see how that plays out. But that's not the only game, obviously, that we have on tonight's slate. We're going to talk about the later kickoff at 9 p.m. Eastern Time between the Chargers and the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to talk about that, preview that right after the break. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.